Well, some interesting comments from this past week from Ben Watson, who is one of the most intelligent guys to have played at Georgia. Him and the Stinchcombs and probably the Frickses all in that same category of IQ scores. But Ben was straight to the point on, I think it was Saturday night or Sunday morning, when he said, we have to be honest. He was talking about Georgia. What you have to do is we have to be honest. What we did was not good enough. And I think that's pretty clear, but to hear some folks say it allows you to dive into that a little bit more. When you look at the Bama Georgia game and how it will move forward now that Georgia's got Michigan on its plate, there's a lot to clean up. There's a lot to deal with from the Dogs defensively and on the offensive side of the ball, too. But against Alabama, that was one of their weakest performances in about 12 games. Well, no, it's more like 16 games or so. Georgia had won 16 games in a row. And, like, for instance, against Cincinnati, they didn't play so hot the entire time, but they won the game. They played pretty well defensively from the Florida game on last year. But against Alabama, the explosion in the second quarter for Alabama, scoring 24 points, and then a 31st point coming right out of the gate. On offense, it was just too much. It was a landslide, and sometimes games can get away from you. It didn't necessarily feel like the game had gotten away from Georgia completely, but in looking at everything and listening to what folks say, Georgia's going to have to refocus on where they're going from here. Everyone's going to focus on the quarterback. That's the easy talking point, but there's so much to clean up on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, it's abnormal for Georgia to give up 41 points. It's abnormal for Kirby's teams to give up more than 30 these days. I mean, even, this season, obviously, they did not. Even in 2020, that was not a common thing for the Georgia Bulldogs to do, give up, more than 30 points. It happened against Alabama and Florida, and that's it. And then it becomes the same question over and over again, which is, do you have to score over 40 to win in college football? I don't think you necessarily do. But not every time, but often when Georgia scores over 30, when the opposition scores over 30, Georgia loses. Last 2 years ago against LSU, Georgia allowed 37 points and lost the game. So it's one of these things where uh, the defense is gonna have to perform. Yes, the offense was not where it needed to be, but the defense needed to perform. But Ben's point is something that fans don't focus on, which is we have to be honest about what happens. Fans want to have a I don't want to say quick fix. Fans want a solution that happens very quickly. Fans want a plug and play thing. So naturally, they're going to talk about replacing Stetson with JT Daniels. And maybe that happens. I don't know. But that's not going to exclusively solve your problems. This is a multi layered issue that happened for Georgia. And as they get ready for a Michigan defense that is one of the best in the country, you're not going to fix this loss with any one problem. Again, the perspective is very simple here. Georgia can still win the national championship. It just has a slightly more difficult path than it did entering on last Saturday. We have to be honest. What we did was not good enough. Completely correct. And the one thing that you see more and more in Georgia's losses over time is a pattern of allowing at least 4 touchdowns. The one exception to that lately was the South Carolina game in 2019 that people always seem to reference, not acknowledging that it was like it's in a different universe. I mean, it just doesn't happen. So since 17, Georgia's only lost 2 games where they haven't given up 4 touchdowns. That was the national championship game against Alabama and the South Carolina game in 2019. So part of me is saying, is it really the offense that's the problem? I mean, when you are used to preventing the other team from scoring 30 points and you usually score 30 points, seems like it's probably a lot more of the defense than people would let on. that Dan Lanning has been tied to the Oregon job, whether that's true or not, now leads to, okay, what's going on here? Is this an issue? I doubt it. I mean, I'm just being honest. It doesn't seem like that would be an issue to me because you've got Will Muschamp as well as, very specifically, Kirby Smart. And I would say, too, Georgia's success in games where teams have scored over 30 points against them is low. And vice versa, by the way. You know, when Georgia scores over 30, like they did against Mississippi State, South Carolina, Missouri last year, the way they did against uh, UAB, Carolina, Vandy, Arkansas, Auburn, Kentucky, the Gators, Missouri, Tennessee, Charleston Southern, Georgia Tech. I feel like Steve Jobs sometimes. Or you get what I'm saying? It's both. So you've got to do both. And, you know, what Ben was specifically talking about was on the defensive side of the ball. And he's right. This defensive unit, I expect this defensive unit to play better, not just when they play Michigan, but if they get the opportunity to play Auburn, if they get the opportunity to play Alabama again, I expect them to play better. And there's going to be no one reason why. There's going to be a lot of different reasons. There won't be 3 or 4 blown coverages. We've seen that with Georgia. Alabama made them play. Uh, we will see, I would expect, more pressure on Bryce Young. Georgia's the only team this season. This is a shocking statement. Georgia's the only team this season that did not sack Bryce Young. I mean, that is hard to imagine, but it's true. So every game this season, Alabama gave up at least 1 sack in every single game. Georgia didn't have a single one. I mean, Mercer sacked him twice. So that those two things alone make the game vastly different. I mean, you don't have Alabama scoring 41 points, and then obviously you can't throw pick sixes or one. Certainly could have been two from Stetson. And the offensive side of the ball has to play better too. But the focus has been so much on, you know, can we just get Stetson Bennett out of there, that you're missing what really did go wrong, which was the defense did not play the way it typically has this season. But Ben is right. I mean, listen, that SEC game, that SEC crew post game, they are as good an analyst as we have in college football. They do. There's no, repeating of the word physical or physicality. There's no guesswork. Those guys really watch the games, all right, and they really hone in. I do not watch the Big Ten network. It is very possible that they have very good analysts too. I think Mark Richt and company do a pretty good job on the ACC network, I have to say as well. But it's Doring and Gene Chizik with the addition now of Ben Watson. This is I'm telling you, you need to watch those guys. They are exceptionally good at discussing what is reality. I mean, Chris Doring is never making excuses for the Florida Gators. So it is just bare bones what it is. And you know, when Ben says we have to be honest, what Georgia did is just not good enough. He was talking as a player. He was speaking as if he were a player. He's right, and Gene Chizik had some things to say about that too. I'm going to talk about that in a future video. Make sure you're taking advantage of this $2 deal down below. It is going away soon. $2 for 2 months. We'll see you over on Dawg Post.